Hi, welcome back to the channel. This week it's something different, and that is Xenon Basslines. And I've been having quite a bit of fun creating these over the last week. Just makes a bit of change from the typical rolling 16ths. So as always with sound design, I recommend you picture the sound in your head. Conceptualize how it's going to look in the synth before you just start going twiddling knobs, because otherwise you'll get very quickly distracted and end up creating something that you weren't really going for. Now that can sometimes be a positive, but it can also be distracting as well. So with this in particular, I want an offbeat 8th note bass, and then before that, I want the same kind of sounding bass to be reversed or kind of sounds like it's being sucked up into the main bass. So let's create the offbeat bass first. For that, I'm going to use oscillator B, and that will make sense in a moment. Obviously they're identical, but just logically that will make sense in a moment why I'm doing that. Let's also open up filter 2. So oscillator B is going to filter 2. Let's change that to a 24 dB. Obviously we select oscillator B. And let's draw in some MIDI here. Let's go, I don't know, F sharp. And like I said, this is going to be on every offbeat. Let's make them all 1/8 long, like I said, and maybe put them down an octave. Doesn't really matter, obviously, because you can then adjust it here. Let's give that a envelope, attach that to the cutoff, unipolar, resonance down. So that's our offbeat bass. But obviously that's way too happy for a Zenonesque bass line. So let's create the kind of sucky one then. And to do that, let's create another series of similar notes. We're going to pitch them down an octave. Turn on oscillator A, down to octaves, random down, and here let's assign this one to filter 1. Again, 24. The cutoff here is at 104. That's just an arbitrary number, but let's do the same here, 104. And then we'll assign a macro to the cutoff on 1 and on 2. Let's go into the matrix. Let's turn the depth down. In fact, let's do that bipolar. So now we're going up, and then we're going down. So we'll leave it in the middle for now. And the reason for creating a macro is because that affects filter 1 and filter 2 simultaneously. Now let's have a listen to what's going on here with our MIDI. So obviously because we have one note pitched down an octave, it's giving that change. So let's go into our oscillator mapping here. Then oscillator A we're using as our slide bass. If we look at the notes, we see C1 and C2, or octave 1 and octave 2. So let's turn down oscillator A, so that's only being triggered in the first octave, and we'll turn up oscillator B, so that's only being triggered in the second octave. So we're almost there. Let's just turn up oscillator A by 1 octave. That's to counteract the octave adjustment in the MIDI. So now they're playing exactly the same, with the only difference being envelope 2 is currently only on filter 2. So let's put that on filter 1 for now. That's only temporary. We can see here this is at 41%, so let's put it also 41. Let's just do sort here to get our house in order. So now they're absolutely identical. Let's turn off the kick to emphasize that. Perfect. But like I said, we don't want that. We want the first oscillator, this one here, to be sliding up into the second with little or no filter modulation. So let's remove this modulation here, remove all modulation. Let's go to LFO 1 and we'll attach that to level, turn this down, and we'll change this to 1/8 duration, envelope mode, and make it a ramp like so. So now let's have a look at a oscilloscope, and we can see that we have the bass sliding up into the offbeat bass here. We can adjust the level on this to make it more in line with this. But I like to drop it a bit so it's not exactly the same level. You can hear when the second one comes in, when the main offbeat comes in. Let's go around there. Let's also attach LFO 1 to the cutoff here. Let's turn it up just a little bit. Let's give it a kick and let's do what we have now currently. So it's getting there. Let's go to our effects. We'll turn off the EQ. We don't need that. And we'll put on a distortion. And we'll also follow that with a filter. On the distortion, let's go something like hard clip. Turn it up quite a bit. And you can hear with the filter after it, you only really get the harmonics. It's not sounding unpleasant. You only get the filter is filtering out the unpleasantness at the top end. Filter on. Let's give it a bit of drive. Now let's go have a look at our MIDI here. This is quite simple. Let's make this, 4 bars. Duplicate, duplicate, and duplicate. And then these ones here, let's move them up. Let's go, 2. And then here perhaps. Let's open up LFO tool or any ducker for that matter, because what we've done is a cardinal sin of electronic music, and that is put a bass or any kind of bass sound at the same time a kick is playing. So obviously that's going to impact the feel of the kick. So let's put our docker in. Give it a bit of room there for the kick to breathe. And then also some EQ because it is incredibly deep and subby. I think we can also turn down this cutoff as well to make it a bit more swampy. Let's just maybe play with this curve here. Let's turn it up a bit. So there we are, Zenon Basslines in Serum. And as you saw, it's not really a difficult sound to make. It's made easier in Serum because you can layer up the 2 basses like this and have them split out with the oscillator mapping. But you could also just use 2 independent synths really and layer it up like that. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.